Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Moving on the map now to Minnesota, where we are for the first time hearing from the children of Democratic lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. In a statement, Sophie and Colin Hortman say they are devastated and heartbroken about what happened to their parents and that their love was boundless. They also want to remind everybody who reads their statement, love your neighbors, treat everyone with kindness and respect. Well, 57-year-old Vance Belter is accused of doing just the opposite of that value of love and respect of neighbor in the murders and the shootings that night. Belter caught by police near his home following an exhaustive 36-hour manhunt. Investigators revealed yesterday Belter actually visited the homes of two other politicians the night of the shootings, but say one of the intended targets was on vacation. Police arrived at the other house before the suspect could carry out the attack there. Here's what prosecutors in Minnesota had to say about the chilling moves by their suspect the night of the violence.
It is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares. It's pretty clear from the evidence that he's been planning these attacks for quite some time. There's voluminous writings, as you've seen in the reporting, that were found both in his car and his house about his planning, lists of names and individuals. In terms of the why, it's unclear.
So we carried out that news conference yesterday, 24 hours ago, live here on CBS News 24/7. And in that time, CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen has had a chance to get those charging documents to really dig into what the revelations are there. Jake, I'm still stunned by line of everything that I've read. You?
It was certainly one of the more powerful affidavits that we've read, simply in terms of actually living through the nightmare stuff that the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota was talking about yesterday at that press conference, that this was a deliberate attack, which went layer by layer to people's house, deliberately targeting them, impersonating a police officer, wearing a silicone mask that looked very lifelike, leaving that material after police intercepted him at one of those stops and leading on a manhunt through parts of outside of Minneapolis, in which he actually approached a witness who had obviously had no involvement in the shootings, but then bought a car and an e-bike off of him, where later that car was abandoned and they found him, staked out in the woods. On top of those two murder charges at the local level and attempted murder charges at the local level, federal officials have also charged him with first-degree murder of the Minnesota lawmaker and her husband, who were shot and killed. In addition to that, there are federal stalking charges, because it was clear that he had staked out these homes before, had deliberately a list of people who he was going to go see. And really what we saw, which I think was the most striking thing going forward for anyone in the public sphere like these officials was how he approached these officers. A police officer pulled up to him at one of the homes, and the cop thought that he was a police officer because they already had this alert of a first shooting, tried to talk to him. The man only looked straight ahead, and then the cop pulled away. By the time they really had to move on to another target to make sure other people were protected, right? So certainly some striking details. He appeared in court yesterday, and there'll be another court appearance in the next couple of weeks.
Well, speaking to charges, we know of federal charges. We also know of those state charges. Which ones go first? Which one take priority as prosecutors work to get him into the court system and process him through? And the reason I ask this is because we're also mindful, as Lilia Luciano reported, of the Luigi Mangione case and how the feds want the death penalty there.
That's right. And obviously these first-degree murder charges can be pursued as the death penalty. Attorney General Pam Bondi has made no secret of that. We saw federal law enforcement in Minnesota yesterday say that there really is no preference. However, the level of the federal charges that were charged yesterday and officially put onto paper are available to keep him in prison as the lower charges play out. We saw a federal court appearance yesterday. Really, these will pursue simultaneously, and then eventually something will have to go first. It appears, at least right now, while local officials took the lead, that federal charges might come first, Reed, but we'll see, as obviously with a decent attorney, you're able to kind of punt some of these charges back and delay some of these court appearances. As we've seen with the other high-stakes attacks in the last couple of weeks, think about Boulder, think about the D.C. shooting, where there are these initial charges, and then there's basically a break so that every legal team on the government and attorney side can get their ducks in a row.
All right, so let's put the Belter case aside and the Belter courtroom aside, and let's talk about another consequential case in another courtroom. and that is California and California's Governor Gavin Newsom suing the Trump administration, saying that the Trump administration did not have the authority to enact and bring the National Guard into California. What's happening today in that case?
That's right. In California federal court, there'll be an appeals hearing in front of 3 judges. We saw last week a very short-lived order in which the brother of former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer, Charles Breyer, out of San Francisco, temporarily blocked the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard. A couple of hours later, an appeals court stepped in to give a reprieve so that they can have this hearing today. So as of right now, President Trump is still in charge of those 7,000 or so National Guard. The lower court judge did not take the Newsom administration and California's side on the Marines because they had not been deployed. Now they have, so that certainly could be something we hear today, Reed. There will likely be no decision from the bench, but this is another rung up the court level, and likely no matter what happens and no matter what this appeals court decides, this is likely on the fast track to the Supreme Court.
Jake Rosen, thank you so much.